You know, we'll.
Okay, I'm ready to
Yeah.
start when you are, Mark.
Okay, hold on a second. I need to do something.
Yes.
Trying to get this. Okay, we all set here? Okay. That's right. Okay, welcome everyone to the Tuesday, December 16, 2025 meeting of the Planning Commission. My name is Mark Sakamoto. I'm the chair. And we'll start by, since there's so many of us now, we're going to take roll. Commissioner Chase?
Here.
Commissioner Diamond?
Here.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Present.
Commissioner Hogan?
Here.
Commissioner Abbey?
Here.
Commissioner Gossman?
Here.
Okay, and also in attendance are City Planner Catherine Gunther and City Recorder Kimmy Jackson. We're in the work session right now, and the thing we are going to work on today is the discussion of the water capacity for future development. And Rick McClung,
Yeah, I'm to him now.
okay,
Sorry, we just came out of a meeting a couple minutes ago and I was saying, Kimmy, he was on Zoom from the water treatment plant. I hope he remembers that these were back to back.
and more recent
Yes.
data.
I was sort of hoping for some more specifics on patterns of consumption, for example. So
From 21 to 25?
or even just like, I really wanted to see what the average vacation rental uses versus those of us who live here.
And Rick is on the line.
Regular,
Oh, okay.
things like that just might give us some interesting ideas for some policies going forward.
You know, I mean, that to me is something that the public works people can work on. I tend to be oversimplifying sometimes, I guess, but I'm just looking for someone to say, okay, this is what we projected based on this. You know, he's got some population numbers out there, some usage numbers, and just say, this is how much we project. Based on that number of people, this is how much water we're going to use. This is how much water we can get. And there's a difference. And is that a safe margin for contingencies like more people than we think, or a drought or whatever?
I guess I'm thinking of it from just, eavesdropping on the utility billing department all day, every day. We don't have a set pattern of consumption. We have people who use zero for many months out of the year, but then they come here and when they're here, they use a lot.
But he has in
I'll withdraw my question. The question, I didn't mean to.
Okay.
The question was if there were other kinds of data that people were interested in seeing. Some of it won't come from Public Works. It may come from utility billing. I'd be happy to compile a list and see if I can track that down. That's all I
okay.
didn't get to turn into.
Yeah.
But it's old.
Yeah.
Was that?
The histogram is good. The demand is a function of every month.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very.
And so that's
2020.
Rick's on.
Yes, he is.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
You're muted, Rick.
Yeah, hey, how's it
Oh,
going?
there you are. We got you. We got you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. I know you're busy. We've all read that water demand analysis you provided, which is
Yeah.
very
Did you read
interesting.
the latest one where I included the Reedy Creek flows and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that was attached to that was one that was attached to the revised agenda.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
let me, and this is just me talking, so, and I encourage everybody to chime in, but basically what I'm looking for is every time we talk about the housing, and planning for housing in Yachats, the question a lot of people bring up is, do we have enough water to support the having that number of people, that many more people living in the city? And I don't have an answer to that. And what I'd like to get to at the end of our conversation is to be able to give a simple yes or no, which I understand that's asking a lot, but
No, I'm ready to tell you.
okay.
In the past, we did have a water problem. Every summer it seemed like we were
Mhm.
going into drought conditions. But we have an agreement, a contract with South Lincoln now that gives us 100 gallons a minute, which equals 144,000 gallons a day. And our combining that with our lowest flows we've ever had on Reedy Creek, that brings us up to 350,000 gallons a day. And my highest demand day is the 4th of July around 225. So we don't have a water problem like we used to. And
Okay.
um, it's pretty much solved. I would go as far as say we don't have to worry about it anymore. Unless, Pepsi plant comes in or something.
Yeah.
If the city's trying to decide if it's a factor in ADUs, I don't see it being a factor at all. And, I'm not on the planning commission, but I would have to think if you ever reached 100 ADUs, that would just be enormous. I just don't think we'll ever hit that number, but I'm not sitting in your chair. So,
Right.
Do we need to worry
Uh,
about, we need to worry about these backup source, the Lincoln County? Do we have to worry about them having a drought and running out of water?
yeah, that's always a possibility, but yeah, I've been here. I just celebrated my 27th, and they have never once had a water shortage. Last year, I had to check in the creeks every week because I help out over there at South Lincoln. I got a good relationship with them. So I know what their creeks look like. I know what it looks like in the dry spells. I've ran their plants. Yeah, they can handle uh whatever they contract with us for sure.
Speaking of which, I was wondering the terms of the contract are they contractually obligated to provide us that whatever 100 gallons per minute or no matter what, or what were or
Um,
can they?
it's we sign a new agreement seasonally, and
Okay.
that's mainly to repay a fee. We pay a fee just to be hooked up to them, kind of like an SDC every year. And in that agreement is made up by lawyers from both our sides.
Oh,
And
boy.
we want it. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't want on the job experience on something like water. But we're sitting really solid.
Um, so, what else is up?
So when you were talking about South Lincoln County, what about their infrastructure? I read their report and it sounded like they are hit with droughts as well as we are, and that their infrastructure was aging and there's a lot of work that it needs to be done. Are we, what
Yeah,
happens then?
I'm actually involved in their capital plan. I work there 1 day a week, and right now they have two water plants. We got the water plant that would give us water, and that one's doing pretty good. What they're worried about is Wallport's industrial area that's coming up there by the dump and high school. That water is served by a whole nother plant, and it's that plant that they're getting ready to completely refurbish, put in new filter systems and all that. Next summer, they start a $5 million water line improvement project. So they're being really proactive, building for the future, which is really great to see because, last 15, 20 years, they just kind of floated by and wasn't putting a lot of money into their infrastructure. But now they are. They're spending millions and millions of dollars in grants and loans and what's that called when the fire department asks for money?
Levies?
Yeah, a levy. Yeah, stuff like that.
So, one more question related to that then. So their population is increasing as well. Do they have unlimited water then for the future?
No. What we're currently, when I say we, I should say they, so we don't get confused. We're building another addendum to the master plan. And what I wanted them to do was figure out their complete build out. How many houses can you expect in total build out? Figure that out, figure out your how much demand is going to be at the commercial properties, industrial areas, and see what's left over. And which I know will be a lot left over because their biggest demand is north, not us. And besides the Job Corps, that's their number one customer. But they got the 2 water plants, and they can produce 1.5 million gallons a day if they had the the raw water to back it up. That's how good the capability of their plants. But yeah, they are rebuilding it's called the Dix Fork plant, the Dix Fork and the Blodgett Road plant. So the Dix
So-
one's getting rebuilt.
So if we get water from South Lincoln County and our sewer capacity is tied to our water capacity, I assume in some regards, does that change our water, our sewer capacity?
No, because we're not increasing our urban growth boundary.
No, but oh, yeah, right. Okay, so if we get more water from South Lincoln, it's not gonna affect the sewer capacity? No, if we get more water from Lincoln because we're short on water and we increase population, is our sewer capacity good for the future?
Yes, it is running at 50% right now. And it was built for the future all we have to do is add another module to the wastewater plant, and we'd be able to increase our urban growth boundary north. Which I
Okay,
recommend if we did go north. And there's a lot of property up in there that can't get septic approval and stuff like that.
right.
So yeah, wastewater is rocking and rolling. We 2005 we had a moratorium on wastewater, no more building in Yachats. So we built a monster wastewater plant to never worry about that again.
Great, thank you.
Have you done a full-scale test of the interconnect, full volume?
Yeah, there's 2 pumps in there and they run at 150 gallons each. And we have ran them full bore. What we've done exercises where I'll run it for a day and add a few feet to my reservoir just to exercise the whole, we don't want to find out something's broke or wrong.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah, that's nice. So we're really ready. It's really good.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Rick, cost wise, increased water usage in years to come, how does the contract lay out cost increases?
CPIs, whatever their our price would go up when they raise their prices, and they raised their water rates a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and they're in a PUD system right now. They're not just a district anymore, they're a PUD. And they're very, very cautious about water rates, and it's not as easy as just for the city to raise their water rates. It's a different process when you're a PUD. So it would be a slow process. It would never catch us off guard, kind of an ideal.
Do I understand you correctly? The rate we pay for water from them is the same as the rest of their PUD?
Yeah. Yeah, we pay more for what they call a meter base because it's we got a 4-inch meter in there. So we pay the meter base of a 4-inch meter, but the water per unit is the same price.
I'm not sure I understand that. What's the meter base rate? Sorry.
Okay, like when you get your water bill, you got what's called a base rate. That's just your fee if you don't use any water. So that's called the base fee. And then the unit fees on top of the base fee. Like ours is like $7 and something another a unit, plus your base fee. I forget what it is right now. Kimmy might know.
I
In
never
the
look at
city,
my
we
bill.
actually get 2 units free with that base rate.
Mhm.
So if you don't use any more than 2 units, and a unit is 748 gallons. So most people just pay that set fee. But then there is, Rick, I think it's gone up to 9 and change now per unit.
No,
Above that.
No, it's more than that, isn't it?
7 something.
It was 7
Oh,
while.
per unit.
So ours is tied to a specific construction cost index, and it just adjusts based on that every year unless council decides to override that. And typically that's a couple of points a year. We had a 8% jump a few years ago.
We basically are paying for a meter base rate like to them, as though the whole city was their customer
Exactly.
through that meter.
Mhm.
Okay, I got you. So we don't use any, we don't pay the extra, but we have to pay
The
the
base
base.
rate.
Right.
So like right now, we're probably not using any actual water on that connection?
No, we probably won't use water or suspect to use water again until August, September. And we just get down for, it's like a month. In summers, but it's usually, right around a month when I start to sweat a little bit. Is it going to rain or is it going to get hot? Yeah. And last year we didn't even go into um, conservation, and our conservation rules have changed. Actually, they've eased up because of our relationship with South Lincoln there.
Mhm.
We've actually took that into consideration into our conservation measures. So our triggers for the conservation are much higher than they used to be.
Any other questions? We have 2 people in the audience. I don't know, does anybody in the audience have something they'd like to ask while you're here?
I'm curious about something. When the build outs have been done, when they've done those build outs, you mentioned, Rick, about the population. Have they done different configurations? So all single family houses on large lots versus increasing density of duplexes and triplexes. So those tend to use less water than large single family houses.
Yeah, they're just now they just got their proposal to start the investigation of that information. So I know that I'm involved in it and I like answering questions like that. And I'll definitely be asking them to help me answer those.
And that would be great if you can ask them about, because property use versus per capita use are 2 kind of different things. Most water is used on the outside, right? So that's gonna be a question to ask.
Yeah, and unless you get inside Walport, there's not very many. Everything's pretty much R1 up and down the road. Of course, you got your outliers where the hotels and stuff are at. But I've looked around at the properties there, and most of them are R1.
Thanks.
So, but when you said talking to them, were you talking about Cascadia Partners or somebody else? Or Walport?
Walport and The engineer is, for them, is Civil West, and we use Civil West also.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Right,
Yeah, I'm an open book, man. Ask me anything.
So
know,
I think,
It
I'm
comes-
just, again, just out of curiosity, so when we do the conservation, that involves reducing the outside water. That's the first thing.
if we go into conservation, there's no outside water cells. It doesn't mean we can't take it.
But how much, when we do that, how much does the water consumption go down?
It actually goes up. Level one has always made it's kind of like you better hurry up and do what you're gonna do. So
Okay, yeah.
they-
While the water's still there,
yeah.
yeah.
But I have gone into level two before, almost level three. This was before our agreement with South Lincoln. And if we hadn't, if we'd gone into level three, the hotels wouldn't have been able to do their laundry because that was in our code. And that would have effectively shut down our biggest industry payers into our tax base. But now with our agreement with South Lincoln, that's not really going to happen anymore because we got a lot more water that we can call ours.
The thing that surprised me in this histogram of consumption was that the peak months are July and August. But
Yeah,
they're only like 20% more than the other times. It's not
Yeah.
that much more. I was surprised by that.
in the past, I've been here 27 years now, and like I said earlier, Yachas used to close up for the winter. I mean, there wasn't much here. But now our tourism industry,
Right.
the winter's a lot busier than it used to be.
And this graph stops in 2020, so I kind of imagine we came up to the present. It would be
Yeah.
even flatter year round. Consumption doesn't change that much.
Yeah, we'll see how things keep. Every time I think we've topped out on tourism, we edge it up a little more.
yes, David.
Rick, and someone else mentioned that here earlier, is it possible that you could run your table out to include up to 2025?
Yeah, I could go through the data, no problem. I just pulled that out of my master plan that was made a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
So I can update the columns to reflect that.
That'd be cool.
That'd be good.
It would be.
Yeah.
Help us.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question, but it's not related to consumption. It's related to the type of pipe. So when I first got here, I had plastic pipe, and then I went to galvanized pipe, and I took that out, and it was pretty much completely corroded in the inside. So when you combine those waters, are you concerned about that at all? And what kind of pipe would you put in your house if you were gonna put pipe in your house?
Well, I like PEX.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's what I was hoping you'd say.
Yeah, it's so easy to work with, but for the industrial pipe, yeah, I use PVC, Blue Brute, HDPE, that kind of stuff. And Yachats reports to the same boss as South Lincoln does, and that's Oregon Health Authority. And our water is so close to being identical that it's a little scary.
Oh, good. Well, that's good, though.
Oh yeah, they got mountain fresh water just like us.
Yeah.
Yeah, no industry, no timberland cutting. It's pretty pristine.
Very good.
And they have pH standards the same as we do.
Yeah.
Everything's the same.
Okay. Because I was wondering when you said corrosion, is the pH off or something? Is it?
Yeah, for a lot of the pipe in Yachats, when it was metal or it's corroded.
So is that the pH is low or something or?
Well, approximately 7-8 years ago, Oregon Health Authority made a rule that says you got to keep your water above 7 pH, which is in the basic zone. And that pretty much stops the rust in pipes. So about 8 years ago, 7 years ago, we started adding soda ash to raise the pH.
Okay.
Oh, so you do add soda ash to the
Yeah.
water? Okay.
Okay.
What is it naturally? Like down in the 5?
Oh, around 6.9.
Okay,
Oh, okay,
not
so-
that low.
Yeah, and when we get a real fresh rain, it can drop down to 6.7. But yeah, it was never crazy low, just enough to eat at the pipes a little bit.
Yeah.
What else? Anybody else have anything? Yeah, I think maybe if Rick, you could project out using data from as recent as possible and just continue the tables. And then, I'd also like to talk to Cascadia Partners because I'm wondering what I'm sure it's in the housing implementation plan, but I don't remember what the numbers are, but what their projections are
Yeah.
for the population if we implemented their housing implementation plan. And
I'm pretty sure I can lay my hands on
I
that.
was looking for it and I couldn't find it, but that's probably me. But then we could use, because that would be good to be able to do, but not necessarily for you, Rick, but for
Yeah,
our presentation to the public. Well, saying, okay, if we do what Cascadia Partners says to do, it will result in this many more people living here, which will add this much more usage, but we will still have, I'm sure, more than enough money, more than enough water
X
to meet
amount.
that demand.
I'll update the graph and give it to you so you can talk about it next meeting.
Okay,
I'll pop in to the meeting and see if you have any questions.
good.
If you wanted a powerful plot to make that point, you could take this graph of consumption and on the same graph, put the production rate,
Oh, yeah, sure.
the function a month and what we can get from South Lincoln. And then it would be just really clear, oh, there's plenty of water.
Yeah,
Okay.
This map that they did, I don't know if this helps you, if this answers, this was where they could plant houses.
okay, all right. I knew they had something that would tell us.
It was
So that's,
220 years, so
so that's.
Yeah, it was 20 years out.
total Land inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but then, yeah, they used other sources to project our population growth, so they weren't saying this is how many more people will come if you build this kind of housing. They were saying this is how many more people are going to come, so this is the way you meet that need.
Okay.
But so those, are you looking now, Mary?
I'm trying to.
Yeah, I'm sure I can find the graph that kind of laid that out, but I think they primarily used like Portland State.
That's
They
who
do a
our
lot of-
engineer uses. Portland.
Yeah, they're kind of the standard for non-census years for any kind of population data.
Yeah, because Rick, you used, there was a housing implementation plan from several years back that you used the Portland state numbers off of there, right?
Yeah, and they got updated 2022 in my master plan. So
Okay.
yeah, those projection numbers in my master plan were from Portland State 2022.
Okay.
I guess it's still true that if, most of the houses are vacant most of the time, right? You have all these second homes. So if you fill them with people,
We'd be in trouble.
the water, the consumption would go way up. But
And that was
But I-
one of the assumptions that Cascadia made, was that balance between full-time and absentee ownership would
Mhm.
remain the same
that
over
is this
20 years.
Mm.
So they sort of figured for every housing unit that we actually need, we would have to produce 2 more.
Right.
And, and they acknowledged that could be a little out of whack because that was not a number they were used to seeing,
Right.
since we had more than 60% of our homes vacant. And that has shifted a bit since COVID. I think we've got over 200 new residents, but we didn't build 200 new houses. It was mostly people converting their part-time homes to full-time.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. I hadn't heard that one before.
Because I was like, where are all these people living? I'm busy, but I'm not that busy. And then I started looking at, and that was the pattern. I was doing a lot of garage conversions to home office space or adding another master bedroom, so that people could make their weekend homes their full-time homes.
Well, that's true. This is anecdotal, but yeah, now that I think about it, I've talked to several people who just moved here and it's pretty much the same story. Yeah, I had a house here. I would come once in a
Still
while.
work from home in your huts and now,
Now they're moving in full time. That's true.
so now that we're saying that, I do wonder if that 60% vacancy rate is
Yeah.
true, because there were quite a few people who moved in.
And that'll change that annual number, the leveling of the monthly usage.
Yeah.
The good
Catherine,
news is that we've got
a long time ago, we went through the water billings, and if it reads zero, there is usually a consistency, and that's one of the reasons we made the two unit thing. It was, we had so many people using zero that we were going underwater. We needed
Pun intended. Well, it was actually around the financing for the upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant. The city couldn't get loans through these infrastructure financing places because we didn't have any set revenue.
Yeah.
So with the base rate, now we can say we have 960 some meters and everybody's gonna pay at a minimum of whatever it is now, $114 a month,
Yeah.
whether they turn the faucet on or not. And so that qualified us for some loans that otherwise they said, you guys are not a good risk because
yeah,
you don't know how much money you're gonna make.
that was the case for the South Reservoir.
Do
Yeah.
you want to talk a little bit about what increasing water storage does for us?
Well, it definitely takes away any roller coaster effect on urgencies. Let's say the plant is shut off on Friday. I can leave it off until Monday and not worry about it. But the biggest thing I like about water storage, and by the way, we have 1.7 million in storage right now, is fire protection. And a small fire probably wouldn't, but if it was a fire that spread, you'd want a lot of water.
So we're building a new reservoir, right? There's a plan for that.
We're trying to.
Yeah, oh, we try, okay.
We're looking for property. All right, now we struck out at a property in the north part of town, and now we're looking at the upper part of the water treatment plant property. We're gonna do another geo drill up there in the spring.
okay.
So if we build that, will we keep the existing one operational for this fire protection?
Well, no, because the main reasons we're replacing it is it's not seismic resistant.
Yeah. It's too
And
dangerous to keep it full.
yeah, I just want it gone.
How many gallons is the new one projected to be and how many gallons is the old one?
Old one is 1 million, and the one we want to build is 1.5 million.
And we added the south tank. How
Yeah,
long ago?
that was 250,000. And so just a quick runoff, we got two 10,000 gallon tanks, 126,000 gallon, a 200,000, a 250, and then our 1 million. And it's
So Rick,
about,
when the power went out the other day,
Mhm.
how well did the plant perform?
we got generator backup. Yeah, so is the wastewater plant.
Quick question, out of, all these plans and all this stuff, has there ever been any discussion of possibility of tying all of our, fire hose outlets to wastewater? We use recycled water for fire.
Yeah, that I refer to that as a purple pipe project.
Like, yeah,
Well, that's the color of the pipe for reusable water. You can't non-potable water.
Mhm.
And the expense of that would be similar to rebuilding our whole distribution system.
Oh, my dear.
Unless we got like a, a 10 million, $15 million, man, it's pretty unrealistic. But, it's a shame because we could, but then you'd have to have reservoir storage for non-potable water. You just don't make it on demand at, 2,000 gallons a minute.
Or you could just pump direct from the river if you're doing that, right?
Well,
Right.
yeah, the fire department does have transfer pumps that they can use, but I want those guys speedy if it was my house.
I know I was gonna ask. So, there are those storage tanks scattered around the sea. I live on Horizon Hill, on Gimlet. So there's one tank above me, and then there's another tank on the top of the hill. And I know there's a one south of the bridge. I know they can be refilled, but are they somehow interconnected so that, let's say there's a fire on Gimlet or on Horizon Hill somewhere, that as that tank is being drawn down, that we can continue to fill up with the
Yeah.
other tanks?
Yeah, we have 5 pump stations in town that, our water system is kind of like a house of cards because of Horizon Hill, the view properties and stuff. So we have different water levels or tiers, you might call them. And each reservoir, to get that water in that reservoir, has a pump station.
Okay.
And to get to the top reservoir, the one on the very top,
Mhm.
takes 2 pump stations to get it up there. And we have a very good maintenance program. That's one thing Yahats gives Public Works money for, is good maintenance.
That's nice to know. No, because that's something that always gets short
Yeah, and
budget is maintenance.
for the first time, starting about a year and a half ago, we actually got enough staff to do the maintenance. Before it's like, why don't you spend this money? We're giving you money. I'm like, only so many hours in a day. So now things are running real smooth.
Part of this was the fire hydrants sort of upgrading and
Wish.
all that.
We're actually going to be going through a fire hydrant upgrade, planning out which fire hydrant vacancies we have. Did I lose you guys?
No, we're good.
You slow it down for a second.
Because of the new law that says you have to have a fire hydrant, I don't know, 500 feet or something like that from your house. We have areas where that's not happening. Okay. We have some vacancy, some areas where we got gaps. So we want to put fire hydrants there so people can build.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay, Rick, so you'll get us the updated figures going through whatever 2024, 2025. And then I think in the next meeting we can talk about as the planning commission how we want to present that to make that information available to the public. Because I
Yeah.
want to make it as
Narrative.
simple as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want mixed messages on stuff like this.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to have a single statement from the city or whoever saying, this is how much water we think we're going to use, or this is how much water we have available to us from, all sources. This is how much we think we're going to need based on the projection for population. and there's a space between the two, and that's our cushion.
I
And-
understand what. Yeah, I can produce that.
Because that would be because, I tend to think kind of simply, and I would like it to be as simple as possible. So that
That's a good,
people can look at it and say, yeah, there's enough. It's just, that's the end of it. That's the end of the conversation. But yeah, I think people will feel a lot better if we could do something like that for them, especially in the midst of all this other stuff we're trying to do.
okay.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for Rick?
Really appreciate your time.
Yes.
Really great, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks for taking time. Okay. Okay, well, since that was the only thing on our work session, I believe, right? Okay, then, I guess we can adjourn until 3 o'clock, and then we'll have our, public session and talk about what's on the agenda for that. Anybody? Okay. We're adjourned until 3 o'clock.
Oh.
Here.
All right, and you let me know when you're ready.
Okay, ready. Okay, this is now the regular public session of the Planning Commission. Continuing on, the first item on the agenda is announcements and correspondence. Any announcements or correspondence for the commission today? Nothing, Kimmy?
No, nothing.
All right.
Already got one.
The next item on the agenda is citizens' concern. This is limited to items that are not on the agenda. Anyone in the audience is free to say anything as long as you stay within the 5-minute limit. If you do make a statement, we ask that you give both your name and your address. So is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak? Sir?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Mark Green. I live at 1120 Sackey Lane in Yahats.
Okay.
And I wanted to discuss, there was discussions earlier about, in the work session about the water supply and so forth. I wanted to discuss what happens to future water supplies under climate change. I'll give you a little background. I have a PhD in atmospheric science, and I'm on the graduate faculty of the atmospheric sciences program at the University of Reno, and a program which I directed for 6 years. I'm also an emeritus research professor in the Division of Atmospheric Sciences at the Desert Research Institute, which is a research branch of the Nevada System of Higher Education. And I'm basing my comments here primarily, although it fits with other material and scientific information I've seen over the years, on the 7th Oregon Climate Assessment, which was prepared by the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute in January of this year. OCCRI produces biennial assessments of climate in Oregon, pursuant to Oregon House Bill 3543. And their assessment relies on output from an assortment of global climate models in what's called the Climate Model Intercomparison Project. The global models, but they're downscaled to pick up the resolution available, that pick out like the Willamette Valley versus the Coast Ranges versus the Cascades and so forth. So for Lincoln County, or this area, our area, the report predicts increased temperatures, particularly in the summer, no statistically significant trend in annual precipitation, but significantly reduced summer precipitation, increased frequency, severity, and duration of droughts, and also projected a statistically significant increase in evapotranspiration, which basically is the transfer of moisture from the earth and vegetation to the atmosphere. So that'd be losing water that does fall from the sky. And for our area, the report predicts increased temperatures and decreased precipitation for the months of April through September. And this would likely lead Yahats water sources, Reedy Creek and Salmon Creek, to have inadequate flows in late summer, early fall more frequently than we have as change happens over the decades to come. So I think, we heard earlier that looks like for now we're good, but that's really relying on current precipitation and evapotranspiration conditions, whereas things may well change or projected to change in the decades ahead. And I think particularly if we're going to have zoning changes that will bring more population here, we need to be aware of that potential. To have where it's sufficient now, it may not be sufficient in the future. I know we do have an agreement to purchase water from Southwest Lincoln PUD in the autumn. However, the same climate factors affecting us will also affect them that may prevent them from having sufficient water in the future to supply the water, Yahats. So I recommend that more consideration be given of possible effects of climate change on future stream flow and water supply, before final decisions are made on rezoning as recommended by, for example, Cascade Partners. Okay, thank you.
Actually, Mr. Green, it's funny you brought that up because that is actually a conversation that we've had in the past. My question is, and I understand that, and I've seen other climate projection models. The thing that I struggle with is converting those projections for potential reduced precipitation, increased temperature, increased transpiration, into actual numbers in terms of, okay, what's the projected flow of Reedy Creek 20 years from now? What is going to be, how much is water usage in the city of Yachats going to increase per person, per capita, in that, given that scenario? And because as you were here for our
Anything in this report, they did not look at individual stream flows and say that's going to have this effect.
and I understand.
There's certainly, reduced precipitation, more evaporation,
Right.
drier soils from
Right.
warmer temperatures and droughts. So water that does fall on the soils, it's going to be less likely to run into the streams. But to quantify that is, that's another step that hasn't been taken yet.
Yeah, and that's.
But it certainly would be worth looking at, and I would think probably by maybe, one place to start would be to consult with some of the authors of this report with this issue, saying, okay. Because there's numbers in here, I didn't present specific numbers from April through September, there were projections for like the Central Coast as to how many millimeters per month less we would get from April through September. But to turn that into a change in stream flow, again, that's another step, but.
But there are models of stream flows, right? There are people who have modeled that.
Yes,
So somewhere there's,
well, yeah, there's probably more information out there and I think, maybe talking to some of the authors of this report, we can get some ideas of how to make that connection if it hasn't already been done. But I would recommend, and I would be, hopefully, happy to volunteer my time to try to, get more information if that's of interest.
There you go.
there you go.
Yeah, because like I said, I struggle, I think what a lot of people struggle is, you saw our conversation with Rick, is that, he can say, okay, this is how much water we have now. This is how many people we think we're going to have. This is how much flow we have now. And we can sit here and say, well, there's going to be climate change and it will have impacts. And I think we can all agree that it is. But to take it down to the level of this is how much more water we are going to need, or this is how much more water we're going to use based on that. And I know that's difficult to do, and it will take a complex mathematical model to build that. But frankly, for people like Rick or for the city to make decisions, or for us to make decisions about what is the capacity here, that's really what we need.
Yeah.
So first of all, if you could, Kimmy, is it okay if he sends you his report, whatever you have for distribution to the planning commission?
Sure.
And then,
It's really just kind of a one page.
That'd be great.
and if it has names or links or whatever, and pass it on, and I think we'll take a look at it. I will tell you right now, it is something that we as a planning commission are probably not going to be able to deal with on our own. It's probably have to kick it upstairs to, hi, Bobby.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
So,
your talents and willingness to
yeah,
participate will not go to waste, but this group probably isn't the one that,
We'll pay attention to it.
what's that?
We'll pay attention to what.
Hey, I've already got his mailing address, no, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, I'm gonna steal him for the.
personally, I would love to have a model
Yeah,
that would tell me this is how much worse it's going to get based on the number. And then we as a commission and we as a city can make some decisions based on it.
And these climate projections have a lot of uncertainties. They have
Of course.
levels like based on assumed
And then,
Carbon emissions.
So just include the
And the
uncertainty in the error
uncertainties-
budget and you have a number with an error.
Yes.
That's what we need.
Yeah, but
There's
that-
uncertainties, but, you know,
and the range gets wider and wider the further out you go, and I understand that. And some of that is going to be a political decision about, okay, what do we do with these numbers now that we've got them? But the first step, I would think, is to get some numbers that we can work with. And it sounds like that particular paper is based on our best guess, which is all we can do. It's based on our best guess of what the future is going to look like. And if we can somehow get that converted into actual numbers that people can use, then we can take that next step and say, okay, here's the number. What are we going to do about it? Everybody, I think, in town agrees that things are going to change. I remember years ago, some scientist was talking about climate change, and somebody asked him, well, what does it mean to all of us? And the guy goes, the only thing I can tell you is that you're not going to like the change. I can't tell you how much it's going to be, but you're not going to like it. And that's basically where we are right now. I think all of us are sitting here thinking something's going to happen. It's not going to be good, but what is it going to look like in terms of numbers? Are we going to lose 10%, 15%, 20%? You know, and that's really what we need. So if you're willing to help us out with that, that would be great. I think the city would appreciate being able to utilize that.
find out what I can, and then I can report, if I come to a dead end, say that, but I think I could probably make some progress, so.
Hey,
That'd be great.
yeah, I don't know how, Bobby hung up, I guess, but yeah, for me,
Promise to read.
yeah, it would be good to have something. I mean,
I'm
that's
here.
okay. Because what Rick proposed tonight is the first step. You know, it's like, here's what his numbers are, so we know how the city is thinking. If we as a city need to adjust that based on climate change, then we need some set of numbers to make those adjustments. Right now, we don't have that. And I think it would be great if we had something. I'm not saying at all that we will actually, as a city, do anything with it. That's up to other people outside of this commission. But certainly, it would be nice to have those numbers so we can make a conscious decision about what we want to do.
We are the planning commission. I mean,
Well, I know, but it
is, long-term planning is part of our,
but it's specifically housing,
well, land use.
land use, right?
So that includes water supply.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it has nothing to do with us. I'm saying in terms of a decision about what to do
Yeah.
with those numbers, it's kind of above our pay grade.
Absolutely.
Okay. We can have some input into it, and certainly I would like it included, if we have some numbers, included in whatever we're going to do with Cascadia Partners or with Rick's numbers. But it is potentially a much bigger deal than just us. And so if you can get us some numbers, that would be great. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Thank you. I guess there's nobody online then?
No, not online.
Okay. All righty. Let's see, what's next? Okay, Mary, if you give us an update on Cascadia Partners, I think, let's see, since the last time there was the meeting with the advisory committee, right?
There's a meeting with the advisory committee. Are the two new members familiar with Cascadia project and what's going on?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. I didn't want to start out on a long kind of.
Group 123, yes.
Okay,
And I just was looking on the agenda for
right.
report here from November 3rd.
Mhm.
Had the discussions and agreements, yeah.
Did everybody on the commission look at that printout from the?
And essentially, to summarize it,
Yeah.
there was some good input from the members that included some Yachats residents that are commission members, as well as a city councilor and just a regular citizen. And what they were looking at and talking about primarily was the fact that the ADU concept and the keys to that proposal, looking at parking in particular, because that's our,
Surprise,
that's our issue that we're sitting there. And some of the suggestions that came up were an interesting one about could the ADUs be looked at on a case-by-case basis for parking? Was what one of the suggestion was. And Catherine basically said, that's a headache, but
But it's maybe worth it.
but it may be worth it. And it was, the point that was brought up was there are a lot of homes in Yachats without driveways or garages that would be automatically disqualified from having an ADU, especially with, the parking issues that we're talking about. And so, case by case basis, looking at the possibility of on-street parking, potentially in some of the areas that have on-street parking as it is. And then moving on, we're looking at the middle housing allowances and taking it and saying that, possibly putting instead of a duplex, putting 2 homes on a lot with a decreased area in between the 2 homes. And that was an idea on the project. The other idea was controlling the maximum density through lot sizes on R3 and R4 zones, as opposed to separating maximum density requirements. And then the other thought on it was, looking at reducing setbacks. And then finally, as part of it was the design standard. And essentially, the key piece that came up about the design standard was the possibility for doing design standards on, what was it? It was
If you impose anything on duplexes the same, you have to treat duplexes and single dwelling units the same.
equally.
So one option is to impose some design standards on triplexes and up.
Yeah.
But not on duplexes. And so we're getting away from single family residence. That term is no longer being used. So if you see me pause, it's because I'm trying to learn to say single dwelling unit. So, but so those are sort of the options that if we don't want to have design standards for every home that's built in Yachats, then we have to let the duplexes go as well. But we could take triplexes on up and impose some design standards on those larger projects.
So that was, parking continued to have discussions, especially, looking at duplexes and how many parking spaces were required in that. And essentially, there was a pretty good buy-in from the individuals that we were talking about with the stuff that Cascadia was presenting. So and that kind of summarizes it.
The survey report was interesting.
Sure, yes,
42 responses.
correct.
And some of the issues important are polarized, were described as polarized. Did they say what that meant, polarized?
Well, it was an interesting, definitely a pretty small demographic, right? That I think what everybody recognized was that we missed a whole bunch of the people that maybe really have the most to lose or gain by this.
The ones who completed the survey seemed to care strongly in opposite direction.
The other thing that struck me in that was that there were strong opinions about certain things based on the underlying zone.
Correct.
And my perception is that most people aren't even aware of the zone they live in. They look around and they see mostly single dwelling units. See, there you go. I almost did it again. And they think I must be in an R1 zone, when in fact they could well be in an R4 zone. So there were strong opinions about allowing a particular form of higher density housing in the appropriate zones, but I really wonder what people are picturing. I doubt they're envisioning the zoning map the way I am. But that was interesting to me that there was, instead of it just being, nope, I hate it across the board, I'm opposed in R1 and R2, but I'm fine with it in R3, R4, or commercial. It'd be interesting to talk to some of those people and see what they are really thinking.
It looked like Cascadia was taking the survey seriously in formulating the recommendations.
Yeah, they definitely
Yeah.
gave it some weight. I mean, I think
They
that's
did.
where the idea of some design standards came from, and that was a
Yeah.
significant part of our conversation this last time was around design standards and how we might take some of the fear out of this for some people. And I know this poor townhouse project that's been picked on since day one. But what might have happened there that would not have increased the cost of that? Right, because we can't get so crazy with design standards where we make it prohibitively expensive for somebody to build multi-dwelling units. So I thought they did a pretty good, a good job of targeting a few things like garages in the
Garages.
back. Or, not having that just
Land,
wall of garage.
landscaping, driveways, and home entries and that kind of thing for the multi-units. So Catherine came up with a real important factor is that if we change some of the lot, sizes and change some of the area that we allow people to build in, that it would be awfully difficult to put a garage in the back of a place if you can't get the driveway up and around to get the car in.
And they sort of,
So,
oh, yeah, because we don't have alleys, right? So if you
We don't
reduce
have
the side
alleys,
yard
yeah.
setbacks to 5 feet, and then you say garages have to be in the back, that's all well and good. But you sort of have to build the house around the car and then leave it there. So there's some little matters that we may still have to address. But they did say, okay, well, another option would
Yeah.
be that you can't have an oversized 2-car garage that's all you see in the front. So maybe you meet some of your parking requirement, maybe you have a tandem garage. I think there are things we could play with. Irony is that particular project on 9th Street, they had that option. Garages could have gone in the back there. But that's not always the case for most of our properties. It's not practical. So anyway, I think that came directly out of the survey. There'll probably be more discussions around that.
yeah,
We've had some discussions at City Hall since then about how we might reach a broader group of folks. I feel like we did better with our parking study. Actually talking to not just business owners, but their employees, not just people who own homes here, but people who rent or are looking to rent. And that was completely lacking in the survey results. So we're still sort of scheming on that.
the majority were retired homeowners that
Yeah.
responded to it. And if you look at 42 out of how many people were actually at the meeting that Cascadia had, that's really kind of a crappy turnout, to put it precisely.
We
Just-
don't know why.
Statistically poor.
Yeah, he works.
They don't care that much. They don't think it's that important.
Pardon?
We know why the response rate was low. Not really.
Not really, but
It's,
the person that was saying, gosh, there's gonna be 1,000 people from China that do it.
That's the opposite
Online.
of what happened.
Yeah, we didn't have that problem.
Right.
Didn't have that problem, so that didn't skew our results.
yeah, it's hard sometimes to get results from surveys.
One thing that was, a lot of times though, the people who do respond, and I guess it's like writing bad reviews on Yelp, to respond if you are adamantly opposed to something, but this was pretty balanced. So we had people who responded who were real gung-ho about it, people who were sort of somewhat in the middle, like I like it, but not across the board, and then a little bit of the never.
But there was a takeaway there that whatever we do is going to be controversial. And none of it's easy, right?
And that's kind of the
Organization.
nature of the game, right? If we can't remember a time where any planning commission or council decision made the town happy.
Yeah, I think that's the other side. I mean, were the results statistically significant? No, because the sample size was so small. Were the results outside of what people expected? No, I think we pretty much, at least I pretty much expected it to be kind of polarized. Now, how, what the percentage is on one side of the issue versus another, maybe that's a little skewed. But
Well,
the
so-
fact that there's a significant number on both sides of the issue, no, I'm not surprised by that. And I think from a planning perspective, I think we need to keep that in mind, is that we all may think that it's a great idea to have whatever Cascadia Partners is planning with ADUs or whatever, but you can, that there's going to be a significant number of people who think it's not such a great idea.
That's the takeaway from it too. Yeah.
And again, the public meeting was great and I like doing them, but people who don't like the ideas tend not to go necessarily to those public meetings. They may be reluctant to go because they don't want to be the bad guy. So,
Well,
My experience has been exactly the opposite.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
well, it could be. I mean, there are some people who will show up no matter what, but I think, we need to, I always say, I worry is more about the people we don't hear from than the people we do hear from. And the majority of the people in the town, we don't hear from. And I don't know, whether that's good or bad or what that means, but I have to assume that some of those people are not going to be supporters of what Cascadia Partners comes up with. And I think we need to take that into account and try to explain things as best we can to try to, address whatever issues they may have as best we can. We may not be able to convince them, but at least we can, put it out there for them to say, that's kind of what the water thing is about. And the parking thing. Those are two things I know we're going to hear about. And so if we can address those things as best we can, then at least that may help. But I just, I'm not surprised, let's say.
and then we have Cascadia, for a while longer because we got a grant and the grant was, placed with Cascadia to continue on with this project and, helping us get that through to the goal line.
Mhm.
That's great.
Question. Was there any discussion about a projection on how many ADUs might be built in any given year within the city limits?
I don't think we have one.
And I guess it's hard to even start to guess at that until we really nail down all the particulars. Parking being one thing that, the bigger the parking requirement, the fewer places that might qualify to build one. This whole issue of CC&Rs is still a little bit up in the air, but improving from the sense that, so there's a recent House Bill 2138, I think it was, that was designed to solve the problem of old CC&Rs that restrict properties to single dwelling units. It's still kind of questionable, like how effective it's going to be, how far reaching it's going to be. So it's passed, but hasn't really been tested yet. So I'm not pinning all my hopes on that solving the problem, but that's our other issue, is that we have a whole lot of subdivisions that have their own restrictions. So even if we say it's okay to do this, if there are HOAs that feel strongly against it, those rules, those private deed restrictions would still stand unless they're overturned on the state level. So kind of keeping an eye on that.
And the other point is we do have a number of ADUs in town that aren't classified. How's that?
They're not
And some
legal.
of them are legal,
Legal, right.
non-conforming, like
Yeah.
they predated our current
Our current
code, and some of them not so much. But yeah, so some of the other system development charges, we're not sure exactly how that's gonna play out, if there would be an additional SDC charge or not. Again, that might tip it one way or the other for for some folks.
If we have an ADU ordinance in place, it needs to comply with Lincoln counties, I would guess, to some degree. I'm not sure if that overlap.
No, actually, not really. So most of the state now, there's a state mandated policy
For
that basically
ADUs.
says you have to allow it any place you would allow a single dwelling unit. I'm gonna get that. But because we fell under the population threshold, we didn't have to do that. City of Walport did, Lincoln County did not. But we can sort of make it up.
The practical aspect of it is that if somebody applied to build an ADU as a structure, like a change their garage into a dwelling unit, they would still have to go to the county for a building permit.
Oh, but yes, so
Oh, yeah.
yes, but they would be strictly looking at application of the International Building Code.
It's the standard.
Yeah,
Like,
so.
Yeah.
We, our planning department, would review it for compliance with the AHA's code. And if we say, yep, it's fine with the AHA's code, then they will be looking at it for, I want them to look at it and look at it closely. I'm a little concerned. It's been a problem statewide with people doing kind of hokey attic or garage conversions. So we want to make sure that sleeping spaces are safe, that, and Mary had mentioned, we already have some of these lurking, so I sort of want to offer an amnesty period. Come forward now, get your place permitted and inspected.
Yeah.
Because I'm much more interested in them being safe than busting people who are having broken the rules. So that may be the way we kind of kick this off, is to just get a sense of how many do we really have out there, and do we have any issues with those?
One of the, seemed to me that the public meeting, that there was concern about some explosion of ADUs all of a sudden, that there'd be tons of applications for ADUs and that the town's character would change because all of a sudden we've got a lot more ADUs. I'm just kind of curious about our projections. Is it 5 a year? Is it 10 a year? Kind of what are we thinking about?
I really don't think
I
that
don't
there's gonna be a huge explosion of ADUs, and I think that part of it's gonna be the fact that it's hard to get somebody to do the construction.
Well,
I mean,
We'll put a-
let's take a look at it and say, okay, we've got some things that are gonna make it tough to construct an ADU. Unless it's a do-it-yourself project, and then you kind of question who's doing it. And that goes to the inspection and that kind of thing. So it's kind of an interesting question. And, to sit there and say it's gonna increase your land value, well, property now is pretty darn expensive as it is, and
Yeah.
so I don't know that people are gonna use that as the reasoning for putting in an ADU.
Yeah, it seems like having incentives to build ADUs is the best way to manage the growth of ADUs. But the two problem issues we have is, number one, like Mary said, there are ADUs out there right now. So whatever demand there might be, however you measure that, for ADUs, some of that's already been satisfied, under the table. How much? Well, we don't know how many ADUs are out there, so.
there aren't very many. I've been in almost every house in town.
Okay.
There aren't.
And then the second thing is incentives. We aside from waiving the service charge, SDC's service development charges, there's not a whole lot more that we can do short of writing checks to me, which I don't think the city is interested in doing.
And I don't know that there's been, we don't have a whole lot of incentives available to us. We don't collect anything in property taxes. That all goes to the county. So we can't give somebody a property tax break, and that's what, City of Portland was doing when they were first trying to get them going before the state mandated it, was to say, hey, if you commit to retaining this as affordable housing for a certain period of time, we won't charge you anything for the increased value that you just added to your property. We don't have anything like that. But I'd be curious to see, even without incentives, how many people just step up and say, this is something I want to do? And I really don't have any way to gauge that. I think because of the benefits for aging in place, we're gonna see some people who think, hey, this is a great idea. A way to generate a little bit of income at this stage in my life, and then maybe stay in my own home a little longer if I've got somebody there that, I'd put one in just if somebody'd mow my lawn. I mean, no, seriously, there are some benefits to having somebody else on site, but not necessarily right in your house or in your living room. So we may see people just taking us up on it for that reason.
But it's also gonna increase people's tax base, so, I mean, if we're introducing it at about the same time that property taxes are coming out, I think we're not gonna see a huge number of people jumping on that bandwagon.
So the next step, Cascadia is going to come back with some concrete code recommendations.
They're coming back with some code recommendations, and they're also making sure that all of the codes that we have for things like mobile homes and that kind of thing are updated, correctly, so that we meet all the state standards on that information. So that is just a huge piece that they're doing, and I can sit there and say, I'm really grateful to that
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Because they've already provided us drafts of some of the changes that need to be made, and it's pretty extensive already.
It's really extensive.
So that part's easy for us because we don't.
It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
But so what's the hard stuff for us? We're going to have to make some decisions about it.
Parking.
Yeah, that's.
Parking.
Yeah.
And, those kinds of things, and sitting there saying, how much property can you, utilize, and work setbacks and those kinds of things are gonna probably be the harder pieces that, we have to mess with, as well as,
And they're going to give us a list of choices, like.
they're gonna give us a whole.
Yeah, so
This or this, and
they will, they'll give us, for each residential
Yeah.
zone, say, an increase in lot coverage, say from 30% in the R1 to maybe 40 or something like that. And it doesn't mean it's not a take it or leave it kind of thing. That's where the fun begins for you guys. That's a little high, or that's a little low, or, and so it's kind of that for all the standards. The same parking will be probably a more emotionally charged subject than lot coverage or setbacks. But so for each of our zones, there are probably 4 or 5 of the standards that would need to be looked at to make this work. And some of the recommendations for R3 and R4 standards might be higher, more dense than we want to go, just because we don't have this sense of this is R1 and this is R3. Like, you can walk through a neighborhood and have no idea. So we may choose not to accept their recommendations, or just go with their draft as is, and some of the higher density things, it might be too much all at once. But all that's on the table. It should be an interesting discussion. So yeah, you're right. We'll get the mandatory changes out of the way pretty quickly. That should kind of be super easy. It'd be nice to have that done. And we got a little further in the discussions than I would have thought, that there's been beginning of some discussion about cottage clusters and things like that. And that's kind of what, when I applied for this next round of funding, I thought we would just get through ADUs and that would be it. So I'd sort of written a proposal, like, here's where we're going to pick it up. And we're already kind of getting there. I think in our next public meeting, there'll be some discussion, at least introducing the concepts of some of these other forms of housing. So we're a little bit ahead of the game. The LCD, who's putting the bill for this, said that they are more than happy to work with us and just be flexible and help us do whatever we want to do, if we want to put a little more emphasis on public input, because we're a little ahead of the schedule on Cascadia's work on the draft code amendments, that we can use that money for more public meetings, like that. So we'll see how it goes and where we need to put our focus.
Anything else on Cascadia Partners? Yes, David.
Had a question here. In the design standards section, Cascadia Partners makes this comment, system development charges are also different between the housing types. I know you already mentioned system development charges, but what do they mean by that?
I'm not sure exactly where you are, but I'll give you a for instance. You can build the same building, but depending on the form of ownership, you may choose to run everything on one single but large meter. You may have separately metered dwelling units. So every time we label something a townhouse versus a condo versus a multi-unit building, there's a difference in both system development charges and those base rates that we were discussing with the utility billing.
I'm sorry, this was in a paragraph that was talking about ADUs.
Correct. And what they're talking about is, do you put the ADU on a separate meter or do you put it on your home meter?
And so that's
a different separate, separate for the development charges.
So that's what I'm saying, the city's decision on how that works may make the decision for a lot of homeowners about whether or not they want an ADU. So if we treated it like this is a brand new dwelling unit, you're going to pay for the privilege of hooking up to sewer and water. Right now, it's 17,000 and change. It's going up a couple of 3%, I think, on the 1st of January. So there's that cost up front if you had to pay a system development charge for any type of ADU. And then you get a monthly water bill that basically is going to double the cost of providing water to that unit if it's on a separate meter. And it's possible we won't treat them all the same. We might look at an internal conversion. If I convert a garage or a family room into an apartment, maybe that runs off of my existing meter, but if I put a unit in the backyard, maybe that's separately metered. And those are the kinds of decisions that Cascadia is not even pretending they're going to handle
Play with,
for us. It's a policy decision. It's something that obviously council will have some thoughts about. But would expect some recommendations maybe to come from the planning commission. And I've been talking with Public Works about this for a couple of years of sort of, is there a one size fits all policy for Yahats? We have a lot of homes where they're using well less than what you would consider typical household consumption would be if they add one more person. Well, look at myself. I never use my 2 units of free water. So if I added one more person.
Public Works would be leaning toward keeping some system development charges because in this case, they would realize increased demand on potable water and sewage treatment.
And it's, yeah, Nick, that if the population growth projections are at all accurate, that's going to happen one way or the other.
Well, you have just one ADU, right? If it's used, Public Works will have to service that usage. It seems
If we add
like
another
that's what
person to our,
system development charges should support.
so part of the problem or one of the challenges here, we have a one size fits all policy for system development charges. A lot of our neighbors are doing something different. Newport has a 3-tiered. So if you build a house that's less than 1,200 square feet or less, you pay one fee. 2,500 square feet, you pay another. And we might want to look at something like that. Do we charge a system development charge, but it's not the $18,000 that we charge somebody who's building a 3,000 square foot home? That's one possibility. And that might make sense because you're sort of scaling the size of the place is going to determine how many people could possibly be living in it, right? Versus a 3,000 square foot home where you may have a lot more of an added strain on the infrastructure. So we'll have a lot to figure out, and it'll be an interesting conversation with Public Works. And this is part of why I'm sort of also playing some with the utility billing clerk. It's like, can you run me a report that tells me, because really how we do consume, I think, becomes kind of relevant.
Mhm.
It sort of like how many cars do we own per household becomes relevant to the parking conversation. So we'll have some fine tuning to do. For sure. And we may not get it totally right the first time around, we may get all this done and people say, well, I don't want to do it that way. And then maybe we have to take a step back and see if we're being too restrictive. But I think better to do that than to throw it all out there and, create some chaos. It's much easier to unwind it kind of slowly than try to take it back. So.
Anything else on Cascadia Partners? Okay, let's see, I think, believe it,
Now,
yeah,
I can say something on the housing and verification yet.
no, right, go ahead, Jacqueline.
I'm a bad public speaker, so I'm gonna read. As a citizen and someone who's sat in your seats and someone who has been concerned with the city's focus on tourism and lack of homes, I'm coming to speak to you about some observations I've been making of this process. Starting when Yachats completed the housing needs assessment in 2022, there's been broad support for developing housing that's more affordable. I believe much of that support was due to the Planning Commission and Cascadia Partners working throughout the process to explain to the community what the need is and how the lack of affordable housing is detrimental to the community. One example of how the lack of housing affects the larger community is the recent article in the Lincoln Chronicle about the decrease in the food and beverage tax collected. If anyone wonders why we're seeing a downturn in tax receipts, a large part of that could be because without a variety of housing types at affordable price points, the businesses cannot find employees who can live here. How many of our businesses are closed much of the time, only open when they assume tourists will be present? To expand on that, how many of our city employees live within the Yachats? That brings us to another example of why receipts are down. Without a stable, continuous, full-time resident population, businesses simply do not have the customer base to maintain their financial needs. Because of this lack of full-time residents, businesses raise their prices to meet the tourist economy. This was expressed in at least 2 comments submitted to the Lincoln Chronicle poll. Residents leave Yachats, go eat outside of Yachats. From the civic code, the Yachats code discussion notes included in today's agenda, I read that there's community support for missing middle housing in the R3 and R4 zones, which is great. Except if a zoning map is brought out, it shows that almost all the R3 and R4 and C1 zones have already been developed with single family homes. Showing this lack of affordable land, available land, and how it's been developed with single family homes needs to be shared with the community. Otherwise, they simply support something that can no longer happen. Without disallowing single family homes on R3, R4, and C1, and at the same time upzoning properties from R1 to R2 and 3, actual creation of affordable housing stock is not going to happen. Perhaps another way of looking at the recommendations that Cascadia Partners has made is to look at the zoning as a reconfiguration of where density is allowed. And what I mean by that is so much of the properties that are zoned for multifamily housing and commercial has had a single family home built on it. These areas of densities exist. The city had planned for the density, but they have been taken up by single family homes, therefore making it impossible for the needed housing to be built. No longer allowing single family homes to be built by right in higher density zones and upzoning currently zoned R1 is not adding density necessarily, rather it is moving where the density, which is always planned for, is allowed. This will make the needed development of a variety of housing choices able to happen. The commercial aspect is a really important element, the discussion as well, since Yahats has almost no commercial properties left for new businesses. If Yahats is to lure younger families here, businesses that support those families need properties. Several years ago, a dentist wanted to locate here, but there was not an affordable property for them to move into. I believe our city manager has spoken with several people who would like to locate businesses here as well. By continuing to allow single-family homes by right to be built on commercial properties, we continue to limit any economic growth in Yahats. There are more aspects to this process that I believe need to be better understood by the residents. Property values, water, parking are all such areas. These discussion points tend to be understood more through perceptions than reality. I believe that a stronger continuous conversation with data and visuals between the planning commission and the residents needs to happen ahead of the next community meeting held by Cascadia Partners. I also have some examples of development, design that I'd like to leave with you and have uploaded to the website along with this. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
And all the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else about Cascadia Partners? Okay. All right, the next thing is the noxious weed ordinance. Lauren, I don't know if are we at a point to discuss that, or do you want to defer to the next?
Well, for those that haven't even looked at it before, the city mandated that the weed ordinance that's in effect now be updated. A lot of it is pretty simple. There were some judgments made about what's included in the changes and where certain portions of the ordinance go, whether it's extracted from the main part and becomes something separate. But so when we start evaluating it, it'll be fairly simple for a part of it. It's almost like what they're talking about.
Find it simple at all. So we're glad
Well,
we're back.
The thing is that there's a lot more backup information during the research that when I was working with Parks and Commons and Craig Birdie and everything on these, that has not been posted in our agenda and packets. And that's where the confusion probably falls. There's a lot more that will point to you the history and some of the input that was from different individuals and the Parks and Commons and that kind of thing. So it all comes down to a good part of it's going to be pretty easy, but then there are a series of questions that were brought forth by Craig Birdie and others about, well, what should the city realistically do about this? In other words, he couldn't answer it. We were going to have to answer it. So those are going to be need to be discussed, just like we deliberate for other things. You know, it's probably going to be a very decision making based on public input. This the ordinance probably is going to need I hate to say it too, but it's probably going to need some adequate public input because it affects a lot of people. So there's good news and some bad news, a lot of work and very little work. And then when we're ready to start on it, Mark and I'll probably meet and I'll go over everything so that you have a basic understanding of what has happened and the paperwork and the information and the research that I was fed from different angles. And then we can go from there.
Okay. Right.
That sounds a lot better than what we felt like last month. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I could have been here last month, but the day before I had my surgery and
Yeah,
I wasn't
yeah.
about
Yeah,
to try
that's
and.
Well, you could have zoomed in. Jeez.
But I would say it's not as difficult as I'm hearing you have perceived it. It's just a matter of talking
Well, we
about it,
weren't ready
making
to
the
make-
decision.
Yeah, we were not ready to make any decisions. on
And,
that.
and you probably didn't have a lot of the backup information that's
Mm-hmm.
even needed to make that decision. And the thing is that, I'm just gonna say that Greg Burry was insistent that this be done quickly. That's typical of what everybody hands us stuff and said, we need it now.
So had this discussion, but
So,
more on the
I would
side,
recommend.
there's not this urgency that we can't take a minute and get it right.
I
So-
agree 100%. And I tried to say something to that effect, and I hope it was effective.
Well, but they need to put it on their 2026 goals, and then we can cross it off by the end of the year.
Yeah,
You know,
so I think I think it's something that will obviously take multiple sessions working on it.
I think Greg will be happy if we just continue to make progress. I think he's probably concerned about that it just gets forgotten, and it's not going to be, so.
If it, again, this comes directly from him, so whatever he decides is the most important issue.
Yeah,
That's
well,
fine, that's
he
fine.
is ultimately the boss, so.
Yeah. One of the things that was universal that a couple of people said is that within the ordinance now, there's a list of invasive plants. It's very comprehensive, and quite frankly, it's probably got more in there than you need. The universal idea was that list be extracted from the ordinance and made to be put onto the city's website, where anybody could go, and then if they would, under the query, they would say invasive plants.
Mhm.
That this list would pop up. And then within the ordinance, you would simply provide a link to that. That's the easiest part of what
Maybe by
we're doing.
reference to an appendix that had.
Essentially that, except the appendix would lie in different areas within the city's system.
so now if we decide there's a new invasive species, or suddenly we decide we love Himalayan blackberries, we have to actually do a code amendment because it's hardwired into our code.
Yeah.
And so it's similar to what we're doing with some fee schedules. But right now, if we want to change the cost of a conditional use permit application, we have to change the code. It should just say, there is a list of land use application fees that you can find over here.
Yeah, just a reference in the
Yeah.
code.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
nobody's expecting you guys to turn into experts on the actual plants. But a big part of the cleanup would just be to get that out of the code, have a reference, pointing to something that could then be a much more dynamic document.
And that's exactly right. Some of the discussion that came about was that they wanted this list to be a living, changeable document.
Yeah,
Is there like a specification for how the changes get made? Who makes the list and updates it?
The list has been prepared, and they extracted lists from other entities and the state entity. And then Craig Birdie, who is actually quite knowledgeable for plants and stuff, went through and took a look at those that weren't really applicable to our area.
So if it's a living document, then going
It's a living
forward,
document.
how's it going to be maintained? Who's going to keep it alive?
Whoever maintains it after us,
So the planning commission?
I have no idea.
That's something that needs to be
That
determined.
would be something that would need to be determined probably within the ordinance. Is
I-
it could be updated by X number of people.
probably be somebody else, a soil and water conservation district. They do a lot of real hands-on work around here when,
Yeah, they're referenced in this.
Yeah.
Also.
and there's also, OSU, get the name of the.
Yes,
But so OSU, it's not Master Gardeners, but it's something like
The
that.
extension service?
Yeah, the
Thank
extension.
you.
Thank you.
They are mentioned in our riparian corridor vegetation stuff, so there's somebody I can rely on, because I don't know. Somebody comes to me and says, we want to remove this tree on the bank of the Yahats River because it's bad for this reason. I don't know if they're lying to me or not. But so in that case, those are the folks I can reach out to and we, when this thing was codified, that they would be a trusted authority. So we can do a similar thing with this. And it can be more than one entity, but, yeah, it shouldn't be the planning commission.
It would be nice to have pictures with the weeds.
One of the recommendations that I talked about with Craig, and he said, well, too many people can't recognize
Right.
the plant by a description. So one of the things that we kind of jointly came up with that I put in as a suggestion was for those primary invasive plants that we see everywhere here, a couple of pictures, one of it flowering and one not. And that could be right with the plant list.
Yeah.
Or part of the plant list, or it could be by reference.
Mhm.
And then just so somebody could download it. Oh my God, I've got so much ivy in my property now.
Yeah.
Everybody knows ivy.
Like when Japanese knotweed first
Yeah,
came to
the
town.
knotweed, yeah.
And nobody really knew what it was or how to deal with it. And a lot of the things that people were doing actually made it worse.
Yeah.
That it sort of
Absolutely.
likes to be.
Well, it's,
like
it's hard
grass.
it's hard to put so much information into that could be controversial. In other words, getting rid of certain types of invasive plants. There are some people who would say yank it out, and other people would say don't yank it out, just cut it, So you got to be careful about not getting too much information. That's just the plan.
Well, I'll protect you. If we're not moving fast enough, I'll say.
It's a lot more complicated than I think people generally realize.
Again, we could take it in parts, and one part could be remove those lists that are hardwired in the code, get those out.
Yeah, that's,
um,
you could say,
And designate the agencies that maintain that.
There are parts of it that I would suspect we could do separately.
Yeah.
Yes.
all right, I'd like to keep going now. Under new business, okay, there, I'm not sure what to do about this exactly, so for your help. on this. So we have 2 seats on the commission that, because they're set for 4-year terms, right? And it's predetermined what the terms are by seat. So, Jolene, your term is expiring now, and I'm not sure you are, I hope you're planning on staying.
Plan to.
Okay,
And you just have to say, yes, I would like to.
Yes, I would like to stay.
and the other seat is Steve's?
Yes,
This was
Okay,
his.
so Steve, you planning on staying?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Even after this.
okay, so you will, you'll be in a resolution that will be going in front of council tomorrow. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Pretty simple.
Good, I'm glad you still feel that way. When I realized that that's what had happened, I said, would you re-up if we asked you?
Should have waited a week.
Say after a meeting.
Well, it's good to hear that you're both gonna stay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the commission chairs meeting. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I will say that they are meeting with ODOT to talk about a transportation plan for the city. That's something that's coming up. A septic, for those of you who don't know, there are some properties, I forget what the number is,
14.
thank you, that to have septic, even they're not connected to the sewer, even though we had thought, or it should be that all properties in the city are connected.
No, our code doesn't say that.
Okay,
So we have a stretch of Horizon Hill.
okay,
There's no city sewer line, and unless they are, it does not actually give a number of feet, but if they're not in proximity of a sewer line, they're not required to do anything about it except have septic. So Horizon Hill, Overlook is another one.
okay.
There's no sewer line anywhere in Overlook, so between Crestview and Green Hill, A couple of septic systems.
Yeah,
So new homes that are built on Horizon Hill outside of the sewer can build with septic. Okay.
The couple that did decided not to do that, actually ran a longer than usual sewer lateral to hook into the sewer, but that's not required of them.
So, the Public Works Commission is working on trying to identify two things. One, I think that they already have identified all the properties that are not connected to sewer.
We just found one about 6 weeks ago. It blew me away. The guy struck some deal. The wastewater treatment plant was built in 1973, and this one guy up on what's now Chief Albert Drive talked somebody into giving him a pass on hooking up. He built his home. And so it was the utility billing clerk. She's like, how come this guy isn't paying any sewer? And I'm like, that's not possible, not on that street. Well, guess what? There had been a septic system working there. And just after we discovered it, and I read the whole agreement he made with the city, it said for as long as this guy owned the house, he didn't have to hook up. Well, about 2 weeks after we discover it, his house sells. So we were able to get that one remedied. But we think we know where they all are, and there are 14 at this point. But there's some other properties that haven't been developed that could technically be developed on septic.
Yeah, that was the next question. I know Lynn was talking
Yeah.
to you about that, trying to figure out which ones have been developed and which ones are not, because obviously the solutions would be different.
Yeah.
For those. Let's see, they are going to be putting a new connex on the cemetery property. I guess they have the pad. They now have to bring power out to it and buy the connex. We're working on,
There's one there.
well, yeah, they're gonna put a new one out there.
Okay.
So, but, because I guess the one that's out there is not in very good shape. So, they are working on a public art ordinance. They're gonna have a public art commission to review different public art items. So that should be nice. What was the Parks and Commons Commission is going to be, is probably, I don't know if they've actually voted on this or not, but the plan is for them to become a committee, no longer a commission, and it will be called the Community Spaces Committee. There's some, because if you're a commission, you have certain rules you have to follow about public meetings and so forth. And it will make it easier for them to work on. And plus it probably functions of, they're probably functioning right now more like a series of committees than actually a commission.
It's that latter part, and Bobby made a really good point in a meeting earlier today that all of these commissions, planning is the only one that's required by the state, that we have all these kind of made up commissions, and that's sort of a relic of the, what they call strong mayor form of government. So when council and commissions played a much bigger role in the day-to-day operations of the city because we didn't have a city manager. And so calling them committees more accurately reflects their role now as advising either council or helping staff on certain projects. The Parks and Commons Commission used to be, they would be turning on the heat in the morning and they were kind of running the operations here in this building. We have a staff person now who's responsible for that, but they aren't exempt from the public meeting.
Oh, okay.
So they'll still have to, same rule, transparency,
Okay.
record keeping, all of that.
Okay, all right. Let's see, before I go to the next item on the agenda, the planner's report, I just remembered something, and it has to do with what's on the commission issues list. The wetland inventory in tomorrow's city council meeting, and I forget who it,
Yeah, so tomorrow, representatives from Department of State Lands and Pacific Habitat Services. So DSL is the state agency that will, in the end, adopt this thing. Pacific Habitat, the consultants who have been doing the work for us for 15 years. They will be coming to give council an update on that. And I'm curious to hear exactly what, we've been exchanging some emails. There's been a couple of sort of rapid fire communications this week, I think, because they're trying to present the best possible picture at the council meeting. So the goal was to get this thing across the finish line.
Right.
The people that have been leaned on, like myself, aren't the people who can actually do the work. I've kind of done my last review of this. Now it's the people who are doing the field work, who is doing the GIS mapping. So they'll come and talk to council tomorrow. So if you guys want to tune into that.
Might be, if you can,
Interesting.
so I,
Yeah.
because this has been
And
hanging.
it's not gonna be a Q&A thing for the public, like, we'll have that. When we get this thing done, there will be a sort of kick off the great unveiling of the new plan. We did this before when we thought we were finished with it, and Pacific Habitat did a great job of doing a really comprehensive presentation on development in wetlands, and they've agreed to come do that again. Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what this map is going to mean for us when we get it. But so we'll do a big public event, hopefully in a couple of months.
Yes.
But this, I hope, will become sort of a routine thing that they're going to be accountable directly to council until this thing is formally adopted.
So yeah, it will be something that we as the commission will probably be hearing about. So it would be useful if you have a chance to listen to what they have to say. Speaking of the issues list, I think the only thing, the Shepherd conditional use site plan, have we gotten anywhere with that? Detailed site plan for that?
I don't know that I finished it or not. They're still, so that's not gonna come back to you. He's still in the process of submitting his building permit application.
Okay,
So what you guys saw, he's gotta do all of his details to satisfy the county for permitting. So there's no permit been issued, but that's on me from here on out.
right, I understand that.
Condition of him receiving his permit, and I know I started on it. I had my checklist of however many things that you guys wanted to see, and then that will go into his property file.
Okay, well, I just wanna,
Surely admit, I mean, you can come visit it when it's in the property file, but it won't be back in the packet any more than any other part of somebody's building permit.
okay, I just wanna, since
Well,
as a condition of approval, the
right.
thing, I just wanna make sure that it gets done, so, well, okay.
So that's, yes.
And then, planners report?
Yeah, so I included a couple things in your packet today. The running building activity report for the year. I think I'd mentioned that I had noticed that the county has been a little lax in finaling these things out. And so I'm sort of starting to track it. I used to just, once it left my desk, I just assumed everything would run smoothly. So I did this partly for myself of sort of adding a column where I went through and looked at the status of every permit that had been opened or was outstanding at the start of the year or opened during this year. So I can double back with them and make sure everything gets its final inspection. But so that's in there. And then I did a list of our land use applications and their outcome. And those are available if anybody is curious about any part of those. The date that's assigned there, you can pull them up in the meeting packet for that date. Again, that's as much for my benefit or the person coming after me for you guys, but just to kind of remind us of what we did. Other things on my list, you mentioned tomorrow, the local wetland inventory update. We did have a kickoff meeting today with ODOT on the transportation system plan that we're just getting started on.
Oh, good.
That was a meeting that Rick was in right before this. We ran right up against this. I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about it, but it was just sort of a first meeting to talk kind of about the scope of the work. So we're in the real sort of high level figuring out where the focus is going to be. The city does not have a transportation system plan. We came close to it back in the 90s. We have what's called the Yachats Village Circulation Plan that has kind of all of the elements of a TSP, but was never formally adopted as that. And without that plan, there are a lot of grants that we're not even eligible for. So last July, Clay Radomski and I took that now 25-year-old plan, use that as sort of the basis for this grant application for the TGM grant, Transportation Growth Management. So I try not to use the acronyms without at least spelling it out once. And we were initially turned down. There was a whole lot of competition for it. Way had warned me going into that. She had some ideas about how we might approach it a little differently than the city had in the past, because we've been turned down over and over again. Then we got turned down one more time, and then Bobby picked up the phone and said, "Do you have any buckets of money anywhere else?" So they said, "Oh, yes. Funny you would mention that." So now we're off and running. And I still don't know exactly what the focus of this is going to be. They're very open to considering all parts of our transportation, not just things directly related to the highway. So one of the things that I had kind of hammered on in the grant proposal was reviving our East Hillside Trail System. And we collected a bunch of signatures for those easements over the years as those subdivisions went in. But then it never got off the ground, so there may be some money in this grant to actually start tuning that, because they would also see it as a good tsunami evacuation tool. To talk about some additional extension of sidewalks. Initially, we thought we would ask them for some more help on downtown parking, but there's some optimism about the trolley this summer. We're going to sort of see how that goes with the trolley running during our peak tourist season and providing some satellite parking for people who work downtown and live elsewhere. So that's what's going on there. It should be fun and interesting, and there's some things that'll fall maybe more on public works than on planning when it comes to figuring them out. But we may be doing some work jointly. Should be kind of interesting.
Yeah, one of the things on the trolley system, that was talked about in their parking study report several years ago, with the idea that there would be a bus or something.
Yeah.
And the thing that came out of that as being a primary concern was signage. And so, you know, if it came to trying to improve getting parking away from downtown, it might be easily done by some signage.
There you go. And I was thinking more for employees, for the workforce bus service, if you will, where there would be basically a parking lot where they could park for the day, jump on the trolley in the morning, take it home at the end of the day. But you're right, in the parking study, and they had suggested that some colorful branding or something so that people
That's
would
correct.
recognize.
But branding was kind of a little bit different than wayfaring signage.
Yes.
They were talking about wayfaring signage. People that come in from out of town can't go round and round and round downtown, and they can't find a parking place to be able to have some signage that would say, park on 4th Street, and then there'll be a trolley that will pick you up.
And it's funny, we did get, so I was actually sitting in City Hall talking to someone from Public Works about needing to communicate to ODOT the need for parking signs to point down to West 4th Street. And I looked out my window and I was looking right at a parking sign, but it was so not eye-catching that they'd put it up at some point and I didn't even realize it was there. So I think what the parking consultant guy was saying is get something that is recognizable as,
Mhm.
hey, the city's trying to get your attention with this sign. And whether it be directing people to parking that may not be obvious to them, like West Fourth Street. Or now the trolley stops, I guess, will.
I think when
Yeah.
that happened, there was some concern about the amount of time that it takes to get a sign off of Highway 101 ODOT.
Well, and that's why I was thinking we
And
better get
that was
started.
kind of a stopgap measure, if I remember right. And I remember that streets went ahead and put the signs up.
Well, there is an official ODOT one right there by the kind of by the dispensary.
Yes.
And, but it's not, you gotta be looking. It's partly the height that it's at, but thank you for the reminder. This talked particularly about the parking study, and I will send a copy of that off to the folks who are gonna be figuring out the scope of work and see if they think there's things in there we can tackle as well.
Right, we're running over right now, so, anything else anybody wants to bring up? Yes, Jolene?
Habitat for Humanity, I mentioned last time, so they have two homes that they're building in Waldport. And the one that's being built right now is the one-bedroom home that the people who were eligible for it fell through. And first off, they were thinking that the application process would be put out around Thanksgiving, but it's not going to be until the 1st of January. I don't have the information right now, but as soon as I do, I'll get it to Kimmy. And also to talk with several businesses in town, because it sure be nice to be able to fill that with somebody who's looking for a home here. I think it's 30, they have to be in the 30% range of the median income of Lincoln County. It sounds like the home, will be worth about 300,000 and the cost to the homeowner will be about 135. It's an amazing deal. And I was really surprised. I asked about the process that they went through the last time. They only had about 10 applicants for the two homes. And there's nobody else who's a one or two person. So on the list, there's nobody who's, single person or two people. It's all bigger families. So if you know anybody who is low income and is wanting to be a homeowner, and then hopefully Bobby and I will be spearheading some kind of discussion next month with the director of Habitat for Humanity, talking about, because it should be nice to get a project here on a lot. But it'd also be nice to show that we have interest from community members for the home in Waldport. So I'll get something as soon as it comes out, and there'll be 2 talking sessions virtual for the process.
Okay, great, that's good. All right, I think that's everything. Anybody else have anything? Going once, going twice.